"Do you need a home and a husband?" the rancher asked the old woman. The wind moved slowly across the wide plains, brushing the tall grass into soft, whispering waves. Dust followed the breeze, dancing in the golden light of late afternoon. A lone figure walked along the dirt road that cut through the ranch land like a scar. She was old, bent slightly forward, with a worn shawl wrapped tightly around her thin shoulders. Her boots were cracked and tired, much like the lines on her face, but her eyes were sharp, carrying stories that had not yet faded. The rancher saw her from a distance. He was standing near the fence, mending a broken wire. At first, he thought she was just another traveler passing through, but something about the slow, determined way she walked made him pause. He wiped his hands on his jeans and leaned against the wooden post, watching her approach. When she was close enough to be seen clearly, he noticed the deep weariness in her posture, yet also a strange strength. She did not look like someone who would simply vanish into the dust. "Ma'am?" he called out gently, not wanting to startle her. "Yes?" Her voice was soft but steady. "You've been walking a long way by the look of it. Are you headed somewhere or just passing through?" "I suppose I've been doing both my whole life." The rancher chuckled, not unkindly. "Well, this land doesn't offer much for passing through except sore feet. Would you like some water?" "That would be kind of you," she said. He went to fetch a tin cup from the porch of his house and filled it from the pump. When he handed it to her, she drank slowly, as though savoring every drop. "Thank you," she said, wiping her lips. "I had almost forgotten how sweet water can taste." The rancher studied her. "You don't look like someone who belongs on the road anymore. If you don't mind me asking, where are you going?" She glanced across the endless fields. "I don't really know. I used to have a home, but time has a way of taking things back. So I walk." He nodded, understanding more than she realized. "Do you have family?" "I did," she said, "but life scattered us like seeds. Some never grew again." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind humming between them. Then, almost without thinking, the rancher asked, "Do you need a home and a husband?" The words hung in the air, awkward and unexpected. Even he was surprised at what he had said. Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she did not look offended. Instead, she laughed softly, a warm sound that carried more life than her tired appearance suggested. "That is a bold question for a stranger to ask," she said. "I know," he replied quickly. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to be rude. It's just, I've been alone here for a long time, and you looked like someone who might need a place to rest, and I—" He stopped, embarrassed. She looked at him with curiosity. "Tell me, rancher, why would you ask an old woman such a thing?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Because I know what loneliness feels like, and because I believe that sometimes the most unlikely people are the ones we need the most." She considered his words. "You are not wrong. Loneliness can be heavier than any load a person carries." He gestured toward the house. "You're welcome to stay, at least for the night. We can talk more over supper." She hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I suppose one night won't hurt." The house was modest but clean, filled with the quiet warmth of a place that had known long days of work and long nights of thought. He set out bread, stew, and more water, and they sat at the small wooden table. "My name is Samuel," he said. "Margaret," she replied. They ate slowly, and as they did, Samuel found himself listening more than he had in years. Margaret spoke of her youth, of a time when she had been a lively girl with dreams as wide as the plains. She had married young, raised children, lost her husband to illness, and eventually watched her children leave one by one to chase their own lives. "I stayed in the old house for as long as I could, but it became too quiet,
Every room echoed with memories, and I realized I was living more in the past than in the present. So you left? Yes. I didn't want to die in a place where I was already a ghost. Samuel nodded. I know that feeling. This ranch belonged to my parents. When they passed, I stayed. It felt like the only way to keep them alive was to keep working the land they loved. But the land doesn't talk back, Margaret said gently. No, he admitted, it doesn't. After supper, Samuel showed Margaret a small guest room. You can rest here, he said. Take all the time you need. That night, Margaret lay awake listening to the quiet sounds of the house. For the first time in years, she did not feel like a stranger in the world. She did not know why this rancher's strange question had touched her so deeply, but it had. It opened a door she thought was long closed. In the days that followed, Margaret stayed. She helped in small ways, cooking meals, mending clothes, even tending to the small garden behind the house. Samuel, in turn, found himself smiling more, feeling less like a solitary figure in an endless landscape. They talked often, sharing stories and laughter. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people discovering that companionship could grow quietly, like a plant in good soil. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Samuel and Margaret sat on the porch watching the sky change colors. I know my question that day was foolish, Samuel said, but I don't regret asking it. Margaret smiled. It wasn't foolish, it was honest, and honesty is rare. Do you ever think it's too late for people like us? He asked. Too late for what? She replied. For love, for belonging? Margaret looked out over the fields. It's only too late when we stop wanting it. He took a deep breath. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that having you here has made this place feel like a home again. She reached out and placed her hand over his. And being here has made me feel like I am part of something again. Time passed, gentle and steady. The seasons shifted, bringing new colors and new life to the ranch. Margaret no longer spoke of leaving. Samuel no longer dreaded the quiet nights. One morning, as they worked together in the garden, Samuel finally said what had been in his heart for months. Margaret, I won't ask you to marry me unless you truly want it, but I would be honored if you stayed with me, not as a guest, but as my partner. She looked at him, her eyes bright with emotion. I never thought I would be asked that again. Life had convinced me that chapter was over. Life was wrong, he said softly. Yes, it was. They did not have a grand wedding. There was no audience, no celebration beyond a simple meal and quiet laughter. But their union was filled with a deep, peaceful joy. Margaret found comfort in the rhythms of ranch life. Samuel found strength in her presence. Together they built something neither of them had expected at this stage of their lives. Years later, travelers would sometimes pass by and see the old rancher and his wife sitting together on the porch, watching the world go by. They might not know the story behind them, but they could see the warmth between them. And if anyone ever asked how they met, Samuel would smile and say, I asked a strange question once, and it changed everything. Because sometimes the simplest and boldest questions are the ones that open the door to a whole new life.